Welcome to the Rich and Purpose Transform Childhood Trauma Summit. We're on day 2 with Dr. Judith Belton. She helped us understand yesterday why our nervous systems get overwhelmed and how Stoicism gives us a philosophical anchor for emotional steadiness. Today, we're bringing those two worlds together and exploring what happens when we actually apply them in everyday life. So, welcome back, Dr. Judith. We're so happy that you're back. That you taught us so much yesterday that we have actually going to take a little bit extra time to tell us how we can actually integrate that into our everyday lives.
Well, thank you for having me back, and thank you for allowing me to show everybody what I do and that it's really not complicated and it can fit into that everyday life.
Yeah, well, it's like riding a bike, right? When we first started riding a bike, complicated, but now we get riding the bike, it's part of our lives and it becomes real easy. So
Yeah.
that's part of know. First, you have to know what's going on, and then it has to become a habit,
Mhm.
right? That you take what you're teaching us and incorporate that into our lives, and then all of a sudden we're regulated. We're not all anxious all the time, and we can maybe have that peaceful life that we kind of think about sometimes.
Definitely.
Well, we're just going to jump right in today. Um, the first question I have for you is, how do you practically combine nervous system work and Stoic philosophy, and what does integration look like in real time?
But by putting the two of them together, we are actually able to create a pathway that is supportive of both the story that we tell ourselves, but also the state that our body is in. So if you think about it, each one of them by themselves, very powerful. But when you put the two of them together, it gives you something deeper. It gives you choice and autonomy instead of reactivity. Stoicism offers that lens, that ability to pause, and I get to interpret, and I get to really see the moment of what's coming up with a lot of clarity. That nervous system awareness offers that ability for me to stay steady enough to actually use that clarity. Because if I'm dysregulated, I don't have clarity, and I may not use it in a healthy way. You know, so when your mind and body are actually able to start working together, you stop reacting from urgency and you start responding from wisdom, because there's a difference in the two. So people often say, I knew what I wanted to do, but in the moment I just couldn't get myself there. I couldn't think of the words, I couldn't think of how to respond. Integration it helps you to solve that gap. So it anchors your psychology and your physiology so that they stop pulling you in opposite directions.
Well, that in itself, right? You've got wisdom to do that, and I really appreciate that how you come together. I wish we could think of an example. Can you think of an example, Dr. Judith, that where
Mhm.
you used it with either in your life or someone else, where you had the irrational thinking or the nervous system, and then how your story changed it at that moment?
Sure. But if I'm able to step back for a moment to actually break down how integration actually works in practice, and then I can, relate that to a real world example. So I want you to have the information. I'm a teacher, I'm a trainer, just that. So that's what I want to make sure that everybody has the information and can see how it's applied. So if you think about um, integration itself under this philosophy is a three part rhythm. So it's not a whole 20 complicated steps. The first thing, I'm interpreting. I notice the meaning my mind is creating about the situation. Stoicism then teaches me, what story am I telling myself? Because I need to get clear on that. Am I telling myself it's about me? Or am I telling myself, that ain't mine? Then the second part is I get to regulate. I support my system just enough to settle that internal noise. Remember, or at least down. This isn't breath work. It's not breaking out into meditation. It's not forcing a calm. It's just, let me settle it just a bit, just enough. Let me have a gap so I can get in here to respond versus react. And it's pausing long enough that my system shifts and not being so reactive and urgent. It's like, okay, we're going to take a minute before we respond to this. And then the third part actually is respond. So you're choosing the action that's aligned with who you are and or as a trauma survivor, who you want to be or who you're becoming so that it doesn't overwhelm your system. Stoicism is very identity based, and it's our values that are tied to our identity. Am I responding as a person who, yeah, may be frustrated, who may be angered by a situation and still in my character? Or am I yelling and screaming and everybody's looking at me because my nervous system is reacting? Okay. So no perfection, no pressure, nothing complicated. So, as I said before, I work with a lot of first responders. So, real world, real case. This gentleman had been on the force, on the fire department, probably 10, 12 years. Okay. And every day he had to make those rapid decisions. He was fire person, trained EMT, had served in multiple tours and wars. So this was really a second career for him because he was in the military until a discharge. So his system was accustomed to being in that state of readiness, even when he was at home. You know, he talked about a lot. I don't feel like I can switch it on and off. And I'm always waiting for that next thing because I don't know when I'm gonna have to respond. So I even asked him, "Do you hear the bell in your sleep?" He said, "Yes, sometimes I do." And his wife supported that. He said, "Yeah," she said, "Yes," because sometimes he'll just jerk up and sit up and like he's leaving and he's still reliving his days, both as a fire person as well as being in the military. So when we started the integration with him, we began with with a stoic question of what is mine to do in this moment? And he thought about it. He was then that he realized all of his moments were not his. All of the moments he was reliving was moments of that his jobs, his responsibilities as a fire person, his responsibilities as a soldier, his responsibilities as something, not what can I do right now? What can I do right now for me? What can I do right now to enjoy my family? So we did his regulation with the safe and sound protocol to help him titrate again and turn down some of that noise. So in doing so, when he became activated, when he was outside of his job, he was able to take a pause, listen to the protocol, and that pause was enough for him to signal in his brain and his nervous system that he was safe, that he didn't have to brace for the next thing because that next thing wasn't happening. He wasn't on the job. Now, I will share that he would, if he heard a truck backfire, because of his experience in war, he would hit the floor. If he heard you drop something in another room in the house, his body would, of course, stiffen and he would get on the ready. But in doing the integration work, he was able to pause, interpret, assess, and be regulated. So over time, he would brace, but it was not as I'm stiff and I've got to do something. So he would come up, he would activate, be able to immediately assess, I'm safe, okay. And then he began to listen to what was going on in the situation instead of reacting immediately. Because remember, he was about problem solving. He found that he could transition to home without bringing that emotional residue of the day into his home. His job didn't change, but his internal world did. And for him, that changed everything. He was able to communicate with his wife when he needed that 30 minutes before he came back out into family activities. Because before, he would immediately go from work, no pause, home. And he never got to reset. So it became habit. And she even noted the difference that 30 minutes made a world of difference for his interactions with her and their children. Because of course, the kids, they have two sons, they were anxious to see dad because dad had been at work for 3 days. And yes, they talk, iPad, Zoom, all of that. But dad's home and the kids would jump on him. And the only way he was able to respond initially was, I got to get myself off of them. I got to get them away from me, because his nervous system was responding to that like another attack. Those 30 minutes, he would, at the end of his 30 minutes, he said he would rush out to grab them up and scoop them up, and then they all flop on the couch. And his wife was like, yes, they've already broke a couch leg. So that was real life, not complicated. But you have to be able to train your nervous system to realizing I don't have to be on the ready all the time. Nothing outside of you changed. Because remember, we can't change a lot of the things that we come in contact with. But he changed, his inner world changed.
Well, I want to just follow up with that a little bit. You said it's identity based. So, you have your emergency responder, and you have to be active all the time. But then when you come home, do in your mind do you convince, or you have convinced yourself that I'm also a mother, I'm also a father and a husband. So you change your identity, so you change your actions. Is that similar to what you're saying, or?
Partially because our identities as humans should be our core values and not our occupations or the roles that we have to take: mom, wife, student, boss. Our identities should be aligned with our values. Am I kind? Am I caring? Am I supportive? Those inner values, those inner virtues, principles, whatever you'd like to call them, should not change because of my role. They should be the guiding force behind me in how I do these roles. So you think about medical professionals, especially our ER staff, they split seconds. So their nervous systems is always on the go. And then you get home and you have mom, you have children, you have husband. Does that person have enough bandwidth left to be mom, to be wife, to be whatever their roles are? They may not, but those virtues and principles of who they are, that identity, doesn't change across roles. They have that capacity to still be kind, caring, loving, whether I'm wife, mother, nurse, surgeon, military, that doesn't change. Society has categorized identity into a role. So that's why I answered yes and no, but it's Stoicism. See, there you go, that mispronunciation is aligned with the values-based perspective of identity versus a role-based perspective of identity.
Well, I appreciate that because I think that's important, right? Because so many husbands, right, we could have different opinions of that in that role. But if they're set in values, then it becomes kind of a blanket. They should be kind, right? Everybody should be a loving type of a person, and so it doesn't change by each individual's role changing, but it changes by really the core values that really came from God or infinite intelligence, whoever you communicate with there. And this kind of goes into a little bit more is how across different populations.
Well, if you think about, we know how it would impact the first responders or even the military personnel because both are focused in their occupational role, their occupational identity on solving the problem, finishing the mission. Whereas when we start to do the integration work, it allows for that recalibration because what do you do when you run out of ammo? You load back up. So it's the same thing with us humans. What do we do when we run out of bandwidth? We have to step back and recalibrate. Am I responding to cooking dinner at the first responder level, or am I sitting here actually able to enjoy cutting up some vegetables, getting it all together, smelling that smell, be like, girl, that smell good, what you cooking in there? Am I able to enjoy, even though if something happens, like if I am enjoying it too much and I smell it burning, I'm still able to activate and go solve the problem, but I don't have to stay at that level all the time. I do a lot of work too with adolescents. This process gives them language because for many of them, they don't have the vocabulary because they don't have the life experience to say, I don't know what's coming up for me. Like I can ask you as a trauma survivor, someone can ask me as a trauma survivor, well, when you hear this, what comes up for you? We have lived experience and we have the vocabulary now as part of our recovery work. But for teens, they don't have the language. And they're not necessarily understanding, is this a hormonal shift? Or is this my nervous system going haywire and alerting me to something that I need to pay attention to? And it's not a complicated process for them to navigate through. And it's not a process, if you think about it, it's not one that induces shame. It empowers you. My leaders, especially my hospital administrators, my judges, my surgeons, it allows them to still lead, but lead from a place of clarity and response because they have emotion and urgency respond, collide every day. That's what happens in emergency rooms across the country, fire stations, police stations. But doing this integration, they can make those decisions because they're going in and out without maintaining that steady activation. And that helps them reduce that internal exhaustion. prior to coming on the clinical side, I'm a former therapist. I was a hospital administrator, and that's an 80-hour-a-week job. And I had a toddler and a husband and was going to grad school full time. Yes, I know what Dr. J, what was you thinking? I was not thinking. I was operating, I was performing. I but I get it now. And that's why I said I had to look at not blaming and shaming, but thankful that I am now kinder nervous system. But I'm also thankful for my nervous system hanging in there with me.
Because I mean, look at all the good you get to do because your nervous system hung in there with you, right? If you would have given up, then no, not only would you, I kind of think that you wouldn't be as happy as you are, and then
Mhm.
we wouldn't be receiving the help that you're now able to give us. So it's great that your nervous system actually hung in there and you're able to do what you do today. I just have a quick question, and it may be kind of outside of it, but it's almost a response. Like when you're talking about someone that is an emergency responder or something, and you come home and now all of a sudden your child doesn't want to eat the broccoli. You know, you're supposed to clean your plates, right? And he doesn't want to eat the broccoli, and they refuse to eat the broccoli at that minute. How do you take that integration that you have now that you put together and separate those roles? So from here I am an emergency responder and this has to happen to this is not an emergency situation where he doesn't have to eat his broccoli or something like that, but you change roles because the situation changes.
Mhm.
How long, or maybe I should just ask, how long does it take to kind of get that integration going from the person that's maybe been a emergency responder for 10 years?
It depends. Most of my clients and I spend time once a week. They're doing the safe and sound protocol every day. So they're working on a daily basis to regulate and then begin integrating this process. Um, I have seen, and we've seen it portrayed in the movies. And I don't believe the movie I'm thinking about, I can't even remember what his occupation was, but it became a battle of wills, with the father ending the scene with screaming, "Eat the, you know what, broccoli," and throwing the plate. So the child is looking at, okay, your response is not a response, that's a reaction. But that then became traumatic for the child. The first step is interpret. Is this child just being defiant, or this child just doesn't like broccoli? I didn't like what's the little things, the Brussels sprouts. Mm-mm. But my family knew, let's not go into a battle of wars because we just won't cook them because I'm not going to eat them. So you have to interpret, am I safe? This little kid is just telling me they don't want to eat broccoli. I can't blame them. I don't want to eat broccoli either. So that's when you blame it on mom. You know, mom wants you to eat your broccoli. It's not me, it's mom. And I'm scared of mom. But that'll help that dad regulate. Once he's determined, he doesn't have to react because it's not a threat. It's another human being exercising their right to not want to eat broccoli. Okay? And that allows him to respond instead of yelling, screaming explicatives and slamming the plate at the child. Again, that's when you blame mom. Mom wants you to eat the broccoli. And you say it really low, but it's a response versus a reaction. So there's no pressure to perform. It's empowering, and you're responding with clarity. If I'm all the way up here, I can imagine eat the broccoli. And it becomes a whole different experience than, okay, I get it. You don't like broccoli. Can you please eat some? We're not negotiating. we're responding, because I don't negotiate with children. Anybody that knows me knows that. But it allows me to come from a non-activated state to try to get the child to understand what I need them to do. Doesn't mean they're going to do it. Remember, I can't control whether this little kid is going to put a piece of broccoli, but I can control the level and the manner that I interact with that child about that broccoli.
Well, and Dr. Judith, it's kind of an intergenerational thing. What you're explaining, an intergenerational thing as well, because so many times we say, "I would never be like my mother, or I'd never do the things that my father does," and then all of a sudden we're that person. So what's going to happen is when his kid doesn't, or their kid doesn't eat broccoli, that traumatic experience is going to keep going and going and
Yeah.
going. So
Yeah.
if you can learn to regulate your system and respond in a stoic fashion, then you're just changing future people and future situations, which again is amazing.
Yes, sir. You can't, it's priceless because it helps align us again with our values and core principles. And isn't that what humanity is supposed to be about?
Well, learning those values again is, depending on where you grow up, is a challenge or a whole different thing sometimes. But values are universal, but it's people that change the values in certain situations that doesn't make them universal. So if we as society can start looking at kindness is the way that we're supposed to respond, generosity, forgiveness, those are all values that we should all have. But it seems like sometimes they're small or they're negligent in the people that actually have, depending on where you grew up and who was your parent.
Yes, sir. Makes a difference. It makes a difference. It makes a difference in our abilities to connect. And when we're connecting, we're responding, we're not reacting.
Well, connection, relationships and connection are just so important in your life because if you think you're always right and everybody's always wrong, if they don't, then you're not going to connect with a lot of people. And then all of a sudden, you're probably going to find yourself alone in a lot of different situations because somebody said, Jamie, he's going to act like this, so don't call him. Don't put him involved, get him involved in this family thing because he's probably going to, there's a good chance that if he comes, things are going to go amok. So,
Mhm.
and I'm a loving and kind person, so don't think that's just an example, but it is something that I think that you do start getting excluded. You do, and then what happens there, I think, Dr. Judith, is that you form this personality that maybe you're not right, right? Despite all the things that you said that could be right, you decide, well, I'm not right because maybe my family says I shouldn't go on this vacation, and they haven't really learned to accept you. Maybe they need a little bit of self-regulation in their bodies, but it becomes a group thing, and unless you're really part of a group, the one thing we do in Rich and Purpose is we do masterminds, so that you can find 5 or 6 people that are in the same. They want to get to a certain place. Maybe we're not all the same place, but your only job is to love and encourage.
Mm,
And if
mm,
you can love and encourage people in all situations,
mm.
then they're not afraid to say, I'm thinking about doing this business, or I'm thinking about bringing this part into my life. And then people say, well, based on my experiences, this could happen, right? Because sometimes we don't, if we all go at the same pace, then we don't know that something can happen. But if we say, based on my life, this is something that could happen. And then if
Right.
you say, well, maybe that could happen, instead of brushing it off of, well, that would never happen to me, right? Then,
Yes.
then it becomes a community, which that's what we're really forming, a powerful community that you can achieve. Napoleon Hill, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But if you hang around people that don't believe and you start to do this something that's really big in your life that you feel passionate about, then all of a sudden they're going to try to discourage you because you're moving out of the range where they're comfortable even. And a lot of times with trauma, that'll bring you right back to where you think, well, you're right. Maybe I don't deserve that, or maybe that's really not possible. So what you're doing is really changing the way that we respond to it. And then you become part of what you're around. So you'll stay away from people that don't love and encourage you, and you'll get around people who do love and encourage you, and then your whole life can change.
Very much so, because I do that now. If a person or a situation is not going to pour into me and I pour into them, I'm not gonna mess with it. Especially this time of year, I have clients who need the emotional regulation to go to these family get-togethers. And we do some specific intense work just to get them through the holidays because they're having to spend time with their family. You mentioned the generational traditions that keep coming up, and sometimes they may be sharing space with their abuser that they have been able to distance themselves from. However, when you go back into that space, we know a trigger is always going to be a trigger. What we learn to do is respond differently. So between now and the end of the year, yeah, my folks need they need a little extra tender love and care.
Yeah. Well, I think it becomes about, and I've always said I don't really believe in a balanced life, but the more that I become have had more wisdom, right? And I think a balanced life can be um, something that you strive for. It's just, sometimes if you have a big goal, maybe you're not going to be there in every situation because you're working on your big goal. But then again, through the reasoning that you promote, everybody can accept that for a short amount of time, right? I
Yes.
mean, don't focus on it for 5 years, like your father. Oh, I'm gonna be work a lot lately, and instead of happening for 3 days or 5 days, right? It happens for 5 years, and eventually that you just kind of do grow apart. I have you
Yes.
a, I have you a question. Is that if someone wants to begin regulating today, what is one simple practice they can use immediately?
Let's see what we're gonna the easiest things that they can do. And it's one of the Stoic principles. What is the truth of what I'm feeling? And what do I actually need in this moment? You're looking at it without performance, without perfection, without expectation. What is the truth of what I'm feeling? We've got to turn inward. Am I angry? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling jealous? What am I truly feeling? And then asking yourself and allowing yourself to receive it. What do I actually need in this moment? Do I need to go outside? Do I need to walk? Do I need a nap? Naps are good, folks. Naps are wasted on babies. If you need a nap, go take one. But it's that simple 1 minute pause interrupts your overwhelm. It's truthfully looking at what you need. And we all need something at any given time in our lives, even though society tells us, oh, I'm self-made this and I'm self-made that. No, we're not. Somebody taught you to read. Somebody taught you how to do math. So we all need something. What's my truth? What do I need? That's it.
Well, that's so powerful, but like you say, it's also so simple once you learn how to do it, right? Because so many times we have a habit, right? Oh, this happened, I'm going to do this, and we don't take that minute, right, to grasp on, is this situation really worth becoming angry about? And if you'll take that minute, life, not only your life, your family's life, and the people that you deal with, it'll all grow better. And
Yes.
in the sense, we start out here in life, and if we can grow into be this person that's kind and loving and generous and all the things that people really want to be around people, then your relationships grow, your families, become closer. So in a sense, Dr. Judith, what you're really teaching people is to have a life that not only they can enjoy, but everyone around them can enjoy. So you break those intergenerational things that keep those wedges in between people, and they start to think, and I really believe you could probably say it was that one moment I took a deep breath, or I just went outside and walked to the sidewalk, and when I came back, my nervous system had adjusted. I realized that I wasn't in control of that particular minute, or I was in control of that particular minute. And this is the way I responded, not reacted.
Right. So very true, because remember that there is a difference, because traumas survivors have responses, and flight or leaving is one. Am I running away from something? Am I avoiding something? Or am I taking a moment away from the situation so that I can gain clarity? Those are two different things.
Well, Dr. Judith, I thank you so much for these 2 days. I think of really bringing your system to a wholeness where we can understand this is the way we should act, and this is the way we actually use what you're teaching us. Tell them, Dr. Judith, if someone says I could use your help, how do they get a hold of you and seek your assistance?
Well, I have two emails, so you can reach me at Dr. J. Belton, Belton, at bbemoreselfled.com. And my website is www.artofintegration.life. And you'll see information there on the programs, how to contact me, fill out an information form, and I'm on social media at Dr. Judith Belton on Instagram and LinkedIn, Facebook.
Well, if their nervous systems are starting to regulate, I didn't get that all down. Don't worry, we're going to put it on the screen. So, so don't worry, everything is going to be taken care of, and you're going to be able to get a hold of Dr. Judith if you feel like it. But again, Dr. Judith, thank you so much. I feel that just now that I have the knowledge that you've shared with me, that my life is going to be better, and I'm sure most of our audience are thinking that sometimes it's that one little nugget, right? I just need that one little nugget that was the change in my life. So thank you so much. And
Mm,
part of being our summit, and I'm sure that with your wisdom and my wisdom, that we are going to get together and change more people's lives as time goes by. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, folks, for hanging in with us for the last 2 days.
Thank you. All right. Bye bye, everyone.